The Practices Circus is an introductory activity familiarizing teachers with what the 8 science and engineering practices are. It starts by having teachers visit a series of stations with different sample activities, and they try to identify the main practice highlighted at each station. Then we have a big group discussion about the whole experience. The stations are fairly simple, so this is really just a surface level look at the practices, but it's a great place to start. As the participants try to figure out the main practice for each station, they usually realize that there are other practices involved too. Different practices may lead into each other or support each other, and teachers start to see how interconnected the practices really are. Another important message of the circus is intentionality. If you're having your students make a graph of some data, why are they doing it? Is the purpose of the graph to analyze and interpret the data for themselves, or to communicate that information to someone else? Don't just do things out of habit, really think about why you're doing it and what your students are going to get out of it. On a more practical level, the circus activities use really cheap, simple materials, and that helps reassure teachers that they're not going to have to spend a fortune on fancy lab equipment in order to engage their students with the NGSS practices. If you decide to use this activity, here are some things you should keep in mind. First, it's definitely important to let the teachers play with all this fun stuff, but don't let them get sidetracked doing that. Make sure they don't spend all the time doing the activities instead of thinking about the practices. Make it clear to your participants that their goal is to identify the practice, not just to do the activity. Second, keep in mind that the discussion at the end is really the key to meaning making for this activity, so be sure you budget enough time for that. If you run out of time and end up rushing through the discussion, it just won't be as effective, so be really careful about that. During the discussion, you should know that some of the stations are really pretty clear and others are not. They're ambiguous on purpose to really spark that discussion about intentionality. So don't be afraid to let teachers disagree about the practices. If they can't decide between 2 practices, ask them how they could shift the activity to intentionally target one or the other. If you decide to do this activity, be sure to check out the lesson plan. That's where you'll find all the details you need to do this successfully, as well as all the prompts for the stations and a list of the inexpensive materials that you'll need.